Longevity is something that doesn't happen when you're older. Something that happens depending on what you invested earlier. It's not a trend.
Thank you, man. It's not a trend. That's a good one.
Co.40. We rise, we explore, dancing through life and so much more.
Hello, and welcome to Co.40 Insights Spot, a discussion platform where we break down the journey, test the blueprint, and dive deep into careers of movement artists. My name is Shafiq. Today, we are thrilled to have our very first guest on the show. Deborah, what would you like our viewers to know about you?
Oh, that's an interesting question because I now have the freedom to introduce myself however I like. Well, in a very unusual way, I could say I'm the shy child that became a dancing lion.
Why do you say shy?
Because that's how I perceived myself or how I felt as a child. Actually, my whole childhood and much of my young adulthood was spent in a shy, more fearful, pretty much in the shadows, always tentatively crawling forwards to see if what I thought was accepted by other people or not.
I find it very interesting when you say a shy child who became a dancing lion. Does that mean that you found your strength through dance?
Exactly. Through dance, I didn't have to use my voice, not in the same way that we do in an everyday, trying to prove yourself as a young adult by joining in conversations, whether it's about politics or ethics or whatever you think about a particular social subject. That dancing was a safe haven for me. I mean, nobody can really interpret or put a finger on what you're doing when you move.
No.
So it's a place where you can go beyond words. And yeah, I guess that's kind of in that direction.
How was your active career as a dancer or a movement artist?
I would go back to my childhood because I cannot remember ever wanting to be anything else. I was about 4 years old, an aunt or somebody asking me what I wanted to be, and I wasn't even doing dance classes, but I would say, I want to be a prima ballerina. Yes. And it wasn't just a dancer, it was a prima ballerina. And then I watched a video of Margot Fonteyn and Rudolf Nureyev dancing a pas de deux from Romeo and Juliet, and it made me cry. And I was maybe 6 years old, and I still hadn't started dance lessons. My first ballet lesson at the age of 6 or 7, and I didn't stop since. I never even let myself go on to really a sidetrack of what else I could do. So that led to me having the appropriate lessons. My parents supported me, and at the age of 11 I auditioned for the Royal Ballet School, and I didn't get in. That would have been for the full-time internat boarding school. And then at 16 I auditioned again, and I also auditioned for Rambert and for the Central School of Ballet. That was the 3 big schools in London, and I got into all 3 of them. And I often wonder now what would have happened to me if I had gone to Rambert, for instance, because I didn't do any contemporary dance at the Royal Ballet School, and I had to learn that afterwards. Whereas I think if I'd have gone to Rambert, I would have had more contemporary contact earlier. Yeah.
I find it very fascinating that what you said earlier, you wouldn't think of doing anything else. And fast forward years later, we are here and you are our very first guest on the podcast. And I think this makes it even extra special. It is so empowering to hear that somehow you found a grasp of what you wanted to do, even when you couldn't put words to it. I find that very, very fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. How did that make you feel at 16?
11, yes. I think it did shake up my already shy and insecure child. My mum was a great cook, and we were always outside. We had 3 meals a day. I never thought about food or my figure or anything like that. It was just like very down to earth. Family, not rich, but that was the first time I would say where I was looking right and left and thinking about, who am I in comparison to another young girl of 11? What are her feet like? What are her legs like? Oh, I remember being in the room in the studio, and I studied later in those rooms as well. So it was like I had a memory of already being in the studio that I would later go to anyway, but being rejected in that room by old ladies at tables with high buns and glasses, scrutinizing over my body. That's when I say it like that now and look back, that's weird. That is quite something to deal with. And I now could almost cry for every 11-year-old going through that. I have the lion that I think was always in me, always kind of wakes up at these moments. And it doesn't bite anyone else. It can also be self-destructive. But there is something in me that will always wake up at the right time in my life and say, without using any bad words, I think that would probably be the F word.
Yeah.
Stuff you. I will do it. I will do it. I will make it, and I will do it, and you will see. With age, I think I've softened with this, but I used to do it a lot when I was a teenager, when I was a young adult. It was almost like a survival method. Whenever I would come up of anything, anybody trying to put me down or put me on a back seat, I would never do it I've never been able to do this in the business, which I've watched a lot of young dancers kind of going past me, doing this and getting exactly what they need, what they want, and I've always thought, how can they do that? I just don't have the voice. I just don't have the guts to be that outright, to be that brazen, to be that like walking on bodies or pushing someone to the right and the other person to the left just to get what I want. So I guess there's many ways to achieve. Now we're talking about quite some, not negative things, but maybe.
I think one of the reasons we are here is to really hear these kind of stories and to understand what goes down and behind in the industry of dance at the moment. And it is very sad to see that this happens and still happens. For lack of a better word, I don't know if it's the right word, is body shaming in a way, because reflecting on what you said, you started to compare yourself to other 11-year-olds, how you looked, how they looked. It's being judged harshly at 11 by very old people, for lack of a better word. And to see that the way they perceive these young souls wanting to let out their lines in dance is very harsh. What do you think needs to change in this perspective to give those young souls a chance?
I don't think I have one sentence that I would be able to formulate to those people, but I can definitely say that I found myself sitting in an audition for my own school in the last 18 years, and I decided that I would not have any kind of throw-out system. I would give the person a chance to show everything. I know the auditions have this quick thing of you do the first class, and in the middle of that, after a certain time, they chuck out. And it's kind of understandable with the thousands of people that turn up sometimes, and what level are we talking about? Concerning education, dance education, and not just classical ballet, but for instance, I can only talk for my school. It's a school that's for mainly contemporary dance. We do ballet every day, but it's for contemporary dance. The students that we're wanting to intake is much broader. There's a chance for many more people to show what they can do, show their special, show their inside, show their gold. And I believe, and saying that, I do believe that, for instance, I wouldn't want a doctor to operate on me that is not of excellence. So where do we start trying to get this boundary of who is allowed and who is not allowed to go on stage or to learn ballet or to learn contemporary dance? Now, I believe that dance education, when we're going back to the beginning of dance education, dancers are just so flexible. They are so kitted out for so many things beyond dancing on stage. So if we talk about management, if we talk about improvisational tasks, to be creative in any moment, at any time, with any situation, to find a good solution, dancers are good at this. Why don't people do dance educations for anyway? Why is dance not even in a normal school? I just don't get my head around this. But going back to the question of the actual audition and being rejected, I have tried to train my eye over the last 20 years to see potential. So not to see what is in front of me right now in this second, but to try to look beyond, to try to imagine what I could imagine this person doing if somebody gave them a chance, if somebody could say yes. What would this yes open up in that person? And so I believe that mentoring young people, mentoring young artists, is all about finding the gold that you cannot see yet. So gold is one of the most precious metals, one of the most precious things we search for, but you cannot see it in the stone. I don't know much about gold mining, but this I have read and I know is that you're not digging and suddenly you see something gleaming in front of you. We have gold, we've cut that out. It's not like that. So what is excellence? Excellence is also not perfection. Excellence is something else.
I'm just really fascinated listening to you, and I could listen to you for hours because I can relate to most of the things you said about really looking beyond and not expecting the dancers or whoever's doing an audition today to find the potential of those people ahead. And you also talked about your school, and I would like to ask more about your school then. What is it that inspired you to start your school?
Yes, well, in about 2004, that was my last season in the theatre here in Kassel. Yeah. I was 34, 35, and I was still actually top fit. There was a couple of mid-20s, but a lot of us were late 20s and mid-30s, and even 40, which was unusual, but it was suited to her work. Anna Mondini was her name, a Brazilian lady, and I was lucky to be taken over by her in Kassel. But I do find myself now questioning a lot of the productions I'm doing. I was never super critical while I was actually a dancer, but as I hit mid-30s, it was starting to come up where I was like, do I really stand behind these productions? What are we actually saying on stage? I think you suddenly get into another level of, I mean, I guess this happens differently. I was just so thankful, I think, to be able to dance in my whole life, that I actually really enjoyed doing this job full-time for different choreographers in the theatre. I really, really enjoyed my theatre life. But I did then feel the need that my own creative energy was rising up inside me, and I didn't know what I would create. But I did have a wish, and this was a wish that I actually wrote on a piece of paper, I think when I was about 18. I said, I will go to Germany or France or onto the continent and dance for a few years, and then I want to return to London and start my own company. And I never returned to London, of course, because work here was good. But it had always been a kind of wish for me to have a kind of company or work with people myself as a choreographer or a facilitator, somebody who pushed ideas, but that I could choose what is our ethics, what is important for us, that it wasn't anymore following someone else's choices. And so I thought, yeah, why not my own company? And yeah, that's right. How am I going to pay those dancers? Because I actually believe we should be paid. We shouldn't do it for nothing. And this conversation kept going on inside me, and this other voice was making suggestions like, well, how would it be? What are these people like that you want to work with? How would you describe them? I wouldn't want to work with people who turn up late or are always sick or don't communicate well. Or I would like to have the kind of atmosphere where everybody is respected, where we don't need to compare ourselves to each other, where the gold in each of us is recognized from each and every one in the group, that we hold each other up in times of difficulty. These kind of very normal things that we like wherever we're working. And then this other voice of Deborah said, well, why don't you create an education or a place where you can train those dancers to be those dancers you would like to work with? And so that's how SOZO was born. SOZO is a Greek word meaning a place that is a place of liberation. So you become free to be the person you are. You can restore anything that is broken or left behind or dropped. You can flourish, evolve like a flower, and you are safe and sound. And dance is kind of like visions in motion. So, yeah.
I want to know your transition from London to Castle, because you said you did more than 10 years in the theatre.
Well, first of all, I ended up in Nuremberg in my first year, and I had an internship in the theatre there, so with 20, and maybe internships were different back then, but I was allowed to do company class every morning, and I did a few walk-on parts in the pieces. The choreographer was David Sutherland back then. At the same time, because I also have a teaching degree from the Royal Ballet School to teach classical ballet, I did it parallel to the dance course. And so it was a 3-year, very intensive for the teaching of classical ballet. I already had that education also under my belt. I was asked to teach in the Ballet Förderzentrum Nuremberg in the afternoons, the professional classes for children and for young adults who had just started their Ausbildung, their professional training. So I was doing that some afternoons a week, and then with the internship in the theatre, I was trying to go away during the weekends to do auditions so that I would have a place to go to the next year. But even the teaching took over my world so much in that year. I didn't really get round to it. I also had some dips in motivation in that year, funny enough, where I thought I was just going to then teach. Let me just settle for teaching, that's okay. I actually learned to love teaching then. And then I was ready to reassign my teaching contract. And of course, I wouldn't have been able to do the internship for another year. I would have just given that up. And an older dancer who was leaving, actually, to become the choreographer in Nordhausen, came up to me and said, you know, I'm leaving the theatre. I'm going to be the choreographer in Nordhausen next year, and I'm taking over the company there. And I have like one space left for a new dancer. And I watch you every morning in training, and you have a great technique, and you're reliable, you're strong. I really see potential in you, and I see potential of you in my work. And he said, would you like a job? I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. Like, I didn't go for an audition, or I was going for auditions but didn't get anything. And then somebody just stops and asks you if you want a job. So that was my break into the theatre for a proper job.
Okay.
Half of the company were the old Ostblock dancers who were there before, from Romania, Poland, Russia, from East Germany, then East Germany, and then some of us from England, France, Austria, Switzerland, Germany, West Germany. And so we all made this new company there. And I was there for 7 years, but working with 2 different choreographers. And after that, I came to Kassel and also worked with 2 different choreographers. So I guess I had some very precious moments in Nordhausen. I mean, I don't know how thankful young people are nowadays, but I was very thankful for this job. And so even my first premiere was super special for me. Dancing Juliet, having a role of a white swan created for me in a very modern production of Swan Lake. The choreographer then, his name was Stefan Haufer, and then Henning Paar. Did also Rites of Spring, another version of Romeo and Juliet, and also then some new works to new music. But I did work with some choreographers who were redoing the classics in a contemporary way, like many do. Yeah, I guess the Romeo and Juliet and the Swan Lake were very, very special to me.
I've noticed one thing when you talk about Romeo, I've noticed a more emotional release. And when we started our conversation, because you said when you were, correct me if I'm wrong, 7, you sat and you watched Romeo and Juliet.
Yes.
And now here you are,
yes.
getting your first job,
Yes.
21 years later, and you have a role created for you for Romeo. So I kind of noticed that emotional attachment, and I think it's a beautiful thing, but I kind of see the universe answering your calls for not giving up, but also the fact that you watch something when you're 7 years old and then you get to dance the same role 1 year later. I think that is, I don't know, that's the beauty of not giving up, but also that's the beauty of dedication. It just feels like really My skin is having goosebumps. Yes. Did you have challenges?
To be honest, I had the feeling I was living my dream the whole time. I had two challenges, as I would guess, and they were both. One of them was psychological, and maybe this is not the podcast to go into detail about that, but I did have an eating disorder that developed actually in the dance school with 17, and I carried it with me for about 11 years. So I didn't actually manage to get rid of it. So I was living my dream with an eating disorder. So it wasn't until I was about 28 that I, actually with the help of a choreographer, because I dared to open up, I dared to say to that choreographer, I think if I carry on like this, I'm going to damage myself so much that it's irreparable. I will give up because I don't think I cannot be that dancer, looking at myself in the mirror every day, being in the limelight, being in the spotlight, and be able to sort this problem out. And his answer was amazing. Actually, it would be an example for other choreographers today, maybe. He just said, no, you don't need to give up, and you should not give up. How much time do you need? And actually, I didn't really know what to say at that time. I just said 3 months, something like that. So I was just written sick for 3 months, and I did I tried a therapy and some other things. And initially it did help because it gave me a good kick-off afterwards in my everyday life to be healed. And I was. And completely.
What was the name of the choreographer?
Henning Pan.
Henning Pan. Is he still alive?
Yes.
We need to look for this dude.
I think he retired 2 years ago.
What do you think needs to be done to make dancers aware that they don't need to go through that?
I was shown the possibilities of an eating disorder through the ballet school. So when I arrived there at 16, I could see how other girls were coping. It was like it's an example. I had examples around me. They were also mostly girls young women who had been through the internat, the boarding school. I was one of the few that came with 16 from the outside. From this family who just eat 3 meals a day, good food on the table, and you eat it. I was very athletic as a teenager. I ran, played netball, I swam, really loved I was already an athlete. I guess it's also the comment. I mean, coming back from the Easter holidays and having some chocolate and stuff. I remember that at that age, my weight could yo-yo quite fast as well, because there was the release of not being at the school anymore and having a weekend away or having a week off. And then you would be home again and you would eat. And no lie, I would stand at the bar on the Monday, and even a teacher would, the thumb and the middle finger, do this on my waist and say, we were eating a lot of Easter eggs last week. No comment. It's not something that it's like my 17-year-old heart cries out for every 17-year-old going through that. Because I just don't know, looking at me at the 17-year-old, it was completely clear. Otherwise, I would not have had the evening. I was not capable of coping with that. So you cope with a mechanism like an eating disorder. And I wonder how many 17-year-olds can cope with healthy self-talk. And I didn't have a phone. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have Instagram. I didn't have notification. I didn't have videos playing at me all day through a small screen telling me what I should look like. So I cannot imagine the growth and the speed in which it would develop nowadays. And so it was again, my lion said, watch me. I will show you that I will become a dancer and that I have the right body and that my body will do this.
Choreographers, this is for you. Dance teachers, this is for you. Artistic directors, this is for you. You cannot judge dancers based on their weight. Judge them on what they can do and what they have to offer, because that is bad. Deborah, what is your advice to the dancers in this era? There is a lot of social media, there is a lot of comparisons in every step of the way. And I do think this is still a problem, eating disorder. What do you have to tell them?
I don't think I have like that one piece of advice, because as with any kind of addiction, with any reason somebody fell into alcoholism or drug addiction, the reason behind is so complex, of the personality of that person, of the child who is carrying their culture and their upbringing with them into whatever they would like their future to be. I've never met anybody with the same kind of eating disorder that I had. An anorexic is not the same as the other anorexic. A bulimic is not the same as the other bulimic. There's many different reasons why you got there, and there's also different expressions of it. What I would say is I can describe it as a lie that you listen to. So I have to take responsibility in the end. No one else can do this for us. It's the same as, I do believe that we should teach each and every young person to take responsibility for their lives. It is absolutely possible to get out of an eating disorder and be 100% completely healed. You don't have to carry any bits of it or hints of it around with you.
Thank you very much. Oof. And now you also have an experience with contemporary dance.
Yes.
Do you think there is a big gap between these two?
I've never been in only a contemporary world, because even in the theatre we were working with contemporary choreographers, but we would have ballet training every morning. And then it started here in Kassel that we would get contemporary guests also to come and feed our contemporary work. And then I also had the experience of meeting dancers come into the company who had never done ballet. So that was a kind of like a process of getting to know these two different worlds. First of all, they mix mostly quite well. For most state theatres, I guess it's kind of like a cocktail that they try out. And some theatres are more radical in that they then get rid of, like Johannes was hardly having any ballet training. Now it's come back again. I wonder how much of this takes place in conversation with the dancers. I guess when I was still in the theatre, we had started having things like company meetings and stuff. And I think all this stuff has now developed more, which is good, depending on how it's facilitated. I think it's not worth theatres having things like company and opening up certain things for discussion and for improvement and stuff when the same person just decides anyway. One of my other struggles was flexibility, because everything started getting so acrobatic. And as a ballet dancer, having like legs in the hips, up to the front, side, the back, that's something you're also training for. But I never realized actually, and this is something I never even realized through my whole ballet training, that my back was actually quite stiff for a contemporary dancer, because I'd never done floor work. Getting my arms strong was no problem, but there were certain things with my shoulder flexibility and my upper back flexibility which made it difficult for me to do things like monkey jumps and stuff like that. And so it was for me one of those moments of frustration where I was thinking, is that what they want to see? Every audition, they just want to see if you can do a monkey jump. Rolling my eyes again. What is actually dancing? Which I've asked myself quite a lot since then. Every time this acrobatic thing gets so much in the forefront, in the focus, where everybody's just focusing on the acrobatics and all the tricks that people can do. And I'm not against them at all. I mean, I find them fun. And of course, at my age, I can't really imagine that I will be able to learn so many new ones anymore. But the ones I kind of tried and were able to do brought me joy and enjoyment, innovation and pleasure to move like that with my body. But as I say, when it was coming into the focus so much that every class, that you couldn't even go and do a training where you would feel as though you trained afterwards, because you had to leave half of the movements out because otherwise you would injure yourself. So you didn't end up really training your feet or your leg alignment or your knees, or it was just all about these tricks. And then also seeing how they were taught. So many of these tricks just coming in from people who could do them anyway. Yeah. So a natural affinity for acrobatics, but not being able to break them down, not being able to teach them to someone who needs teaching, and breaking down and details and more describing on where the transfer of weight happens and the connection and the the coordination of the timing of everything together. So my didactic brain was always looking at the way people were teaching them, and even sometimes deciding not to employ certain teachers, even though my students were saying,
Please.
they do such cool stuff. Like, no.
Has it come to your mind that age played a role into you transitioning from being a dance artist to a director of a school or teacher? Or?
No, I didn't consider myself giving up dancing. I considered myself leaving a theatre company. So I didn't say to myself, I'm giving up dancing. So I did dance. Like I still say now, I haven't given up dancing yet.
That really shows.
The few years after I left in my late 30s, I was still dancing in companies as guests then, while I was setting up SOZO. And also, while SOZO runs, sometimes I will go off and do something. I've been now in the free scene in Kassel with SOZO and as a freelance dancer and choreographer since 2005, so 20 years. To be honest, until about 4 years ago, like until even I was after 50, I couldn't really say that age was escalating fast, that I suddenly felt, whoa. They say if you don't use it, you lose it.
Yeah.
I thoroughly believe in that. The moment you don't do so much, you feel older. Yeah, I can kind of turn that around. There's some months where I just have so much to do with the school that my training suffers. And then other moments where I just join the classes with my students. But what I do notice is in contemporary, because it's not my mother tongue, ballet is my mother tongue, but I would never say that I'm a ballet dancer. I realize that I cannot get my mechanic to be so fast as I want it to be or as the teacher is setting it. I realize that my technique is probably good and my power or my strength of my body is good, but the speed to transfer the weight, I always feel as though I'm running behind the class in any kind of floor thing across the room and I just do it a little bit slower. That's what I've noticed in the last 4 years, maybe especially in the last year. I'm just wondering if every year it will go a bit faster. That's what I'm kind of preparing myself for.
That is fascinating. And what is the trick?
You have to train. Some kind of training has to keep happening. For me, I've gone through phases of, I used to run, so I used to do 10Ks when I was in my mid-30s, actually, in Kassel. I used to run the competitions. I used to really enjoy running. So anyway, running was quite a bit of my life also, so always jogging and stuff. Because of my flexibility, I also found a lot of nice stretches and stuff in the yoga practices or yoga classes and stuff, Pilates. But what I think really was it is to keep doing as many different kinds of classes. So do other people's classes. I have my own teaching methods and my own classes, and they are filled with things that I find valuable. They also can evolve if I do other people's classes. So I might not like everything in somebody else's class. And I guess this is really difficult for the freelance dancers to do, but when you're in a theatre and for 15 years you just do the class every morning. I was never picky. I was never a complainer in the company. There were other dancers in the company who would complain about the classes. But I was just like, just do it. Just filter it. Then leave the bit you do. It's like leaving the bones of the fish on the plate. Just leave it. You don't have to eat it. But do the training. Finish it. And for me, the training in the theatre was my 1.5 hours a day, where it was just for me. I was not learning the choreography to perfect it, to go on stage to make an audience cry or laugh or move them. It was the 1.5 hours where I could say, from the show yesterday, I have a little bit of here in my knee or my shoulder's achy. So I do the class so that I can release this, so that I can make sure this is still strong. Maybe I gave it a little bit more of a break today. So it's always like this reset. So I think that's why I do think that company classes don't always have to be the complex things. The company trainings are actually the food, because you do enough wild stuff with the choreographer. And then I think it's nice to still have workshop classes for the company as kind of like a tool where we say we go for Fortbildung or Weiterbildung, we call it in Germany, to learn new skills and obviously get new perspectives on things. I consider myself a lifelong learner. And everything I do, from swimming to taking a contemporary class with the first years. I love jumping. I love jumping. And that's the one thing where I pray that I can jump for a long time. It's so great to be able to fly in the air. But to jump, you need to train muscles. And if you don't train them, I imagine that I would not be able to jump quite quickly if I didn't train. So I think my advice would be, imagine what you still want to be doing and then train. But you cannot overtrain. Then you will get to know the very fine line. Again, I think that's what the last 5 years has told me the most, is dosing plus whatever. You know, I'm always on my bike. I don't have a car. I bike everywhere. I go or I walk. There's many, many things. I eat a lot of protein. Yeah, I'm not vegan or vegetarian or anything. Meat, eggs. But I don't do carbs and I don't do sugar.
Right. There it is, guys. No carbs, no sugar equals longevity from Deborah. Before we started, you also said something I think it's nice for our audience to hear. You say you missed your swimming in the cold today.
Yeah.
You always do it every day. Why is that?
This is quite a new thing for me, so it's also come up in the last 5 years. I just decided, I have some friends who do it. It's not really a fitness thing in the sense that, I mean, in the summer I swim for about half an hour. And I love wild water swimming. I don't think I would like to go swimming anymore in a swimming pool. Since I go in wild water, the swimming pool is for me. I don't like the smell of the chlorine. I love to be in nature once a day.
What is the mindset? What do you put in your mind first before breaking that ice water and get into that frozen river?
If the water's already frozen, then you cannot be in there for more than about 1 to 2 minutes. So the degree of the water determines how long I stay in.
Okay.
So in the summer, once it's 20 degrees, you don't count. Yeah. But for instance, 2 weeks ago it was 4 degrees the water. So I'm in for about 4 minutes. I don't do neoprene. I'm just in. I just wear a swimsuit and that's it. And my mindset, you have to, like my husband says, I march in like a soldier. I just go in. It's like no turning back.
Okay.
The moment you stop, you might think, I don't know what if I stop to think. I just go in until my heart is under. I put my hands under as well. I don't put my head under, and then I just start swimming. Just move.
Would you be on stage again?
What I would dream of now, and maybe I can speak out there, somebody give me a job. I wouldn't be able to leave SOZO, my school or something, but if somebody would say, hey, what a cool idea to have somebody who's 55 who's kept herself relatively fit and available, I would be very open. I think what I would love is, even though I have a lot of my own ideas and ethics about what I want to do with artwork, I don't want to destroy. I don't want to make pain. I don't want to be in any way overtly rude or provocative. If somebody would offer me something where I would uplift someone, where I could heal, where I could give life, where I could be light, that's the kind of job I would take.
Any choreographer out there, we have an amazing artist here. She's 55 and she said everything. She wants to uplift people. She wants to add to add a voice. So if you're out there, she's right here. You're a mom, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Is there any way your marriage life and your parental life interfered with your artistic career in a way?
No. I met my husband in the theatre. He's a stage technician and he still works there.
Yeah.
And I had already cancelled my contract actually as we met. So we met actually in the months after I had already in my last season in that sense. And even after we were dating the first year, I was still living in Kassel, but I was then guesting in Braunschweig and stuff while I was doing the business plans for SOZO. And then we got married. And while I was pregnant, I carried on planning SOZO. My daughter is now 19, and I opened SOZO when she was 1 year old. Literally, my husband and I, we feel so lucky that we were able to give her a childhood at home. It meant maybe for the first years of marriage that we were giving each other the door handle. But yeah, our daughter could be at home with Papa or with me, depending on who was working in the studio or the theatre. And she's remained an only child. We did toy about having another one, but then the age gap got too big.
Too big.
So we have one daughter who we really enjoy. My husband is a stage technician. He's not an artist. He's very creative in like making furniture and fixing stuff. Very down to earth. Very nature bound. Our dream would be in a tiny house on a piece of land off the grid, growing our own food and stuff. But I never felt that my vision was compromised by our marriage or our child, and I don't think I even had the worry about that. And I'm so thankful that chapter came into my life.
What kind of environment would allow experienced dancers to thrive more and even keep on carrying their artistic crafts?
That's quite complex. We have these different models now of running companies in theatres, like we have now in Kassel the company manager and employing different choreographers. We also have in other houses a house choreographer who stays for longer. It obviously, for a choreographer, it makes a difference to make pieces with who you have in front of you. What has the most weight? The artistic adventures of the choreographer or who is in the company? What determines the choreographer's choice or the company's manager's choice of who is in the company, depending on the choreographic wishes and adventures of the choreographer? Can those people fulfill the wishes of the choreographer? Are the wishes of the choreographer closed or open? So it's a difficult thing to say. I would wish choreographers to stay open with their view or mindset on with whom and with what they can work and with whom and with what not they cannot work. Of young to old, and the audience know in every piece they come and see, the young people will have all the physicality, all the highlights, the solos, and the old people will be there somewhere, but doing less. And so our choreographer is willing to meet an older person, maybe twice their age, and use the skills they have as a choreographer to do something that's more innovative than a monkey jump. Or something that is the new acrobatic whatever, that all the younger ones are doing because this one cannot. Maybe that's just taking an example of the physicality. I ask myself, who are the iconic choreographers on this planet who actually did that?
As we are closing, Deborah, what would you like younger dancers and institutions to understand about longevity?
Longevity is something that doesn't happen when you're older. You have to... It's something that happens depending on what you invested earlier. I mean, I had to undo the whole thing of the eating disorder. That would have made me old. Way beyond my time. Longevity doesn't just turn up. It's not like you can just have it now. So longevity takes your whole life. So that's what people need to realize, is that it's not worth doing what you want for as long as you want and then suddenly deciding, oh, but I also want to live for longer, or I want to be fit for longer, or I want to be sane for longer. But this has to be in mind from education. That whole longevity thing, not just physically, but mentally, has to be embedded in from the beginning onwards. It's not a trend.
Thank you, man. It's not a trend. That's a good one. Okay. And what does continuing to dance mean to you today?
Oh, continuing dance for me today means riding on my bike to SOZO every morning, and sometimes having the realization that I actually don't have the first class, but I'm going to be able to do Lorraine's ballet class before I even start teaching. Having a leap of joy in my heart, thinking, what a lucky person I am. I can go and do a ballet class this morning. It's such a joy to move your body. Maybe you get a little bit more thankful with every year that passes, because you know it's not normal. I mean, I know what other 55-year-old ladies cannot do that didn't do what I did for my career. Not putting it above, or they have done also other amazing things. It's not a comparison of careers. But wow, I'm just so thankful that I learned to move my body as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult, that I was always dancing. I've never done anything else. And to be honest, I never want to do anything else.
What do you think is the most harmful structure for dancers today?
The most harmful structure? Comparison. It's actually foolish to compare yourself with somebody else in anything. How many people are we on this planet? I just don't get my head around it, that if you believe in God, He made billions. Every single nose is different. Every single eye is different. The colour of the iris of the eye, however many hairs, and the structure of each hair follicle is like not two will be found to be the same. And yet we are so foolish to compare ourselves with each other.
Wow. There you go. Okay, last question before I let you go, Deborah. What would you consider hiring dancers now to make a dance company for you?
I would definitely want like a box of chocolates, like Forrest Gump says, with all different fillings in them. For me, it's not just the physical skills, but it's actually the whole person. I want them to engage in the creative process. I personally work in the fact that I'm inspired by the people who are there. Thankful, thoughtful, playful, and I hope also always to be able to create an atmosphere for them to let their defences down.
Thank you so much, Deborah. Just one last thing. Any closing remarks from you to the world there, the dancers, artists, the painters, or all human beings? Whatever you want to say before we close.
Well, I think it's one of our needs as an artist to get resonance, to that what we give resonates with somebody. And I think some of us don't express because we're scared that we don't get that resonance, so we hold back. But what I would encourage is to be bold, to find that little iconic part of you that no one else can say they're iconic because of that. Only you can.
Thank you very much.
Co.40. We rise, we explore, dancing through life and so much more. Yeah, sneakers on the floor.